You're on top of a mountain glassing elk when all of a sudden strangers start shooting at you and your vehicle below. Or you hike back to your truck exhausted, only to find it broken into and all of your gear gone. Or how about this? After hiking to get your ATV at camp, you drive back to retrieve your downed elk, only to find out that it's gone. Nothing left but footprints and tire marks. What would you do? How would you deal with something like this? Can you prepare for crazy things like that? What would you do next? Well, y'all, make sure your hat's on tight for this one. It's going to be some real stories and discussions you won't want to miss. That along with our Elk Bros shout-outs and questions from our Elk Bros mailbox. So, my friends, pull up a chair and adjust your volumes just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your host Gilbert Ornelas and Elk Hunting Coach Joe Gilly. You want to hunt elk, and they live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the show. If it's your first time with us, glad to have you. Hope you enjoy our show. And for those blue-collar hunters out there following our show and grinding it out with us every week, welcome back to Elk Camp. I'm Gilbert Ornelas, the host of your show, coming to you live from Spring, Texas, and joining me from New Mexico, your elk hunting coach, Joe Gillia. Good to be back, Joe.
Yeah, Gilbert, man, I'm so glad to see your face, man. You know, I'm glad we're getting this done. I'm glad we're together. I'm glad we're doing that. We're still less one brother. We're working on that. But I tell you, it was pretty strange to doing this by myself.
No doubt.
My wife says that I'm pretty good at talking to myself, but it's so funny. It seems like ages since we've done this together. So we're back here on the podcast together. And as an update for those people that wanting to know what's going on with Chav, he is out of the hospital. We had a scare when he got an infection a couple of days after chemo. And if you don't know, your immune system's knocked down. And so his was knocked down. He got an infection, and it went to an emergency situation and got sent back to the hospital, man. And it was a little spooky at that time, but he got it all pulled together. They got him leveled out. He's back in rehab. And so right now it's all about the guy's lost so much weight. And he's, if you don't know, he lost use of his lower body from his waist down, but he got signals going again. He's got muscles working. Now they got him in rehab. So goal number one is to learn to walk again. And yeah,
unbelievable. 2-3 months ago, he was putting in 7 miles a day with us. It's crazy,
yeah.
Joe.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and I was reading somebody said today, kiss a little deeper, smile a little longer, and enjoy life, because you just don't know. And Chav and I have a motto. We always tell each other YOLO. You only live once, and
for sure,
you really need to take it all in. And I just, man, so many thanks to Gilbert. You guys are, you and Luis and Manano have just been incredible, checking on him, and Luis sent us a special package that we're going to talk about sometime. And get this, I mean, our listeners, guys, y'all are just, I'm so humbled, man. I really don't know what to say.
No doubt. The outpour all the prayers and well wishes has been overwhelming at best.
Yeah, I mean, we even had the other day, he received a package from Brian Zakovic out of Colorado. He sent him a Beat the Treatment package. It was so cool, man. Just, you know, the only way it's amazing in this hunting community. You know, the only way we know Brian is through social media from somebody that's listened to our show and has sent
Sure.
stuff into us. And you know, he sent that package to Chav, and it's all this stuff that's designed for people that are going through chemotherapy. And I think it was just way cool, you know, that type of thing. And I mean, we get texts from guys at the top of mountains and different places, and it's just pretty doggone neat, Gilbert. I think sometimes it just it touches me so deep inside. And you know, a lot of these listeners, when they send stuff in, and they're sending letters directly to Chav, emailing him. And for you guys that don't know that you can do that, all you got to do is send it to chav@elkbros.com. That's CHAV at ElkBros, ELKBROS.com. And he's been trying to answer them on his iPad and stuff. And you know, it just brings a smile to his face. And sometimes we just shake our head and say, you know, it's so cool how people reach out, how they take the time during their, you know, during their days, Gilbert, because just like you, man, I mean, shoot, you were in the hospital the other day with your dad,
Yeah.
and having open heart surgery. Luis was there immediately to support you, and I mean, that's a story. I mean, all of us are going through things in our lives, and there's thousands of stories out there. And when I walk on that oncology floor, you got the children's oncology, you got the
Yes, sir.
adult oncology, and you know, you see other families that are going through what you're going through, and all you can do is go up on, you know, grab them by the arm and say, God bless, you know, and
Yep.
uh, and you know, it's funny. We do our prayers. I do my prayers for Chav, and as soon as I get done praying for him, I pray for all those other people that are going through the same things and in the world. You know.
Yeah, this cancer deal sucks, man.
Yes, sir.
You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there called FU cancer. You know, I mean, it's serious business. I mean,
Yeah.
ain't nobody want this disease to prosper.
Right.
Uh, like you said, we went through a little scare day before yesterday with my stepdad and Matt Montgomery. Um, you know, they'd do our immediate emergency open heart surgery on him. He came through it like a champ. He's one of the toughest men I've ever met. You know, that stuff has spilled over into my life to how to be tough and resilient. He's an ex-oil field hand, still is. You know, he's got his own business. And, the guy's just a tough old bird. And after not even a full 24 hours of having his chest cracked open in a quadruple bypass, the guy is walking down the hall, right? I mean, I got a video of it. It'll make you weep. That's the kind of toughness that guys like that have. And, that our community, our hunting brothers, man, they've all poured out. I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten. We did do a little bit of social media, not a whole lot at his wishes, but Luis showed up, and the Venezuelan Mafia has been in touch with me. So,
Yeah.
they've all touched my heart. Just like they have with Chav and ElkBros.com. I mean, all these guys that really care, and the hunting community's turned out. I mean, it's amazing the love and the support that we have in such a short time of us, doing this.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I really want to point out tonight, especially because the topic tonight, what we're getting ready to talk about, is one of the dark things, the dark happenings, some of the not so good stories of things that can happen during a season, and I really, even though we're going to talk about that, I want everybody out there to really truly remember that there's just a tiny part of there's turds everywhere in every friggin' bowl, right? So
for sure.
that happens out there. But the hunting community, guys, if we continue to stick together, if we're there for each other in all sorts of ways, in which, we're going to talk about in a few minutes, I just want y'all to remember that even though we're talking about this, we're going to find the positives of it. We're going to see, we're going to talk about how to, just like anything, you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to sprain an ankle. You don't want to get bit by a snake. You don't want to fall off a cliff. You don't want any of that stuff to happen.
None of that.
And so, this is going to be a teaching moment tonight, y'all. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to cover some horror stories, because these are actual stories that other guys had called me and told me about or emailed me about. And I mean, I'm on the road. In fact, we were at the Hall of Fame presentation, and I get a text comes across my phone and says, "Somebody stole my elk." Can you imagine?
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk about those things, Gilbert, here in a minute. But
well, Joe, before we talk about some of these horror stories, you kind of got to know what time it is, Joe.
Yes, sir.
We can't leave that. Yeah, there it is. The ElkBros shout out. For you guys that are new to our show, these are just some of the ways that our listeners show up and you top our charts every week. And we give a shout out to those cities topping our charts.
You betcha. And also, guys, bear with us. I hear a little bit of a popping noise, possibly that you're catching from Gilbert's side over there, and I'm not sure what's causing that. And we apologize. We'll try to figure it out before next time.
Because the show's so hot, Joe.
It
sizzles like bacon.
That's the best way to figure that one out. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to start with our first city. This is the one topping our charts this week. Originally known as Central Park. Yep. The guy that named this place had visited New York Central Park and was so enamored. You like that word, Gilbert? Enamored?
I like enamored, yes.
He was so enamored with New York Park that he named this place Central Park. It's the world's first Kentucky Fried Chicken, now KFC, franchise was established here in 1952 by Harlan Sanders. I know him as the Colonel Sanders.
Doubt.
And this was in South Salt Lake, Utah.
South Salt Lake, Utah.
South Salt Lake, yeah. And
okay.
So here's the thing: it's hard to find anything on this city because Salt Lake keeps coming up, but South Salt Lake was actually a more rural area out, and as the city grows, it ends up getting swallowed. So. Ended up becoming part of the metro area, but it is amongst itself a city.
All right, Joe. Look, he loves to watch me stammer around with names and stuff like that. So he gives me this Indian thing coming up. So y'all, look, this is a city 4 miles west of Milwaukee. This city is known by the locals as Tosa, and is named after Potawatomi, the Potawatomi Indian chief. The name means firefly. And if you like scary, the 1842 Tabernacle Cemetery located here has a ghost of a man often seen to a tree right behind the cemetery sign, flashing an unexpected light and unsuspected and freaks out a lot of visitors.
Yeah.
That city is Wauwatosa, Wisconsin.
Wauwatosa. Do me a favor, turn that mic of yours down just a little bit, bro. Take it down a couple more notches because it still sounds a little rough. I'm not sure why it's picking up. Give me a test.
Right.
Yeah, okay, we're good.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we're picking you up good now. Okay.
Good.
Yeah, Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, man.
Why you do that to me, Joe? You give me all this stuff that's not even Espanol.
I want you to show people how just intellectual.
Yeah, you just like to see me mess up and have to redo.
Yeah. So next up, here we go. Gilbert, and I don't know, maybe it's your system volume. I don't know if you have an up-down button on your system volume. You might, if you have like a down button on your system volume, because I haven't heard a change in that mic volume yet. So
Really?
yeah,
Huh.
yeah. Okay.
Man,
All right.
it doesn't. It just says same as system.
Yeah. You ain't got to get any closer to it because you sound plenty loud, man.
Okay,
Right.
good.
All right. So for next up, for any of our listeners that love to golf, this next city has 22 golf courses within 22 miles, and their Carnival of Cultures held in March has booths from different ethnic groups featuring international cuisine, traditional arts and crafts. And would you believe that this city's beautiful area was actually discovered? Now, this is back in, God, I want to say 1700s, Gilbert, when the founders actually found it when they were chasing some sheep thieves. So
Sheep thieves.
yeah. These men love their sheep. So hey, cada chango, like my father-in-law says, each monkey swings on a different limb. So these guys,
It's a hangable offense here in Texas. Stealing sheep.
Stealing sheep, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this was in San Marcos, California.
Hobby dog. San Marcos, California in the house.
Yep, St. Marcos.
Next up, Joe, proclaimed as the timber capital of the nation. This town is famous for fishing, rafting, waterfalls, but if you want to fly a kite, you might need to go elsewhere. Average wind speed here is a mere 2 miles per hour in early November. Even at its windiest in late June, the average wind speed of 5 miles an hour puts it among the calmest cities in the United States. Roseburg, Oregon in the house.
Roseburg. Man, no, hey, all you Oregon boys out there, man, we so appreciate you guys. And we got so many listeners from Oregon. I mean, man, I Washington, all over the West that we're getting all these different listeners, but Oregon just cranking it out, man. That's what surprised me about our last city here on our list. Last but not least is actually a borough, and not a city itself as most people think. But if the entire world had a population density of these listeners' borough, it would fit into a single country with a population density. Now, see if you can wrap your head around this, of 72,000 people per square mile.
And it ain't in China.
70,000 people per square mile. It's amongst the most peopled over places on earth. If the world lived with this density, if every place in the world lived with this density, everyone would fit into New Zealand. We could put the entire world population onto New Zealand if they fit with that density. From another perspective, though, if this place had a population density of Alaska, then only 28 people would inhabit the entire island where it's at.
Wow.
Manhattan, New York.
Manhattan, New York, and the Big Apple.
New York. Yes, sir. Yep. And a lot of people, like I said, it's a borough of, they have the 5 boroughs there in New York City. So even you think of all of those thousands of people there, and it's not its own city. It's just a borough of the larger city. I think it's pretty interesting.
It's an interesting town. I've been there several times in Manhattan, all over the Bronx. I mean, it's an interesting place, but I'm sure as I'm sitting here right now talking to you, Joe, there are plenty of guys that like to elk hunt from New York.
That's what was so cool, man. I mean, we're getting, we've had guys from the Bronx, right? New York City, now Manhattan. We got listeners in all those areas. And Gilbert, we're over 3,000 cities here in the U.S., man. And
that's fantastic, Joe.
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, I would think that I would see the same places every time, but that's not the case, man.
Well, I want to thank all of our listeners out there for bearing with us too. We've gone through some health issues with our loved ones and stuff like that.
Definitely.
It's something we hate to miss, but we hope you guys understand. We're going to do everything we can to keep pumping this content out. You guys that like us, please rate, review, subscribe. I mean, that's really how we get get this ball rolling.
Definitely.
If you got questions and comments, please go to info@elkbros.com. I mean, that's how we get all of this going.
Yeah.
And we're passionate about it. We needed to take care of some business, Joe, myself, and we hated missing, but we got things we feel like on the downhill slope, and we still need those prayers and good well wishes and thoughts, and appreciate all of that.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
Joe, we've had so many great success stories come in
Yep.
from our listeners this season,
Yeah.
and we want to thank them for all those. But tonight, it's about those stories, isn't it?
No. These stories, man, I tell you, when some of this came across to me, I could not believe it, Gilbert. I was really blown away. But again, I want to remind everybody that these incidents, these are the blue moon happenings, y'all. And but it only takes one bad experience to taint the whole water bucket, right?
For sure.
And it's so funny today. I was actually listening to a podcast today. Um, I was listening to the Elk Talk podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Shout out to those guys; they do a great job. And
They
and
do
the
a
reason
fantastic job.
the reason I was listening to it was when I looked at it, it was talking about out-of-state hunters. Evidently, on one of the hunt, Corey Jacobson had received a note on his truck when he got back that said, "Yeah, it's
Keep
like
out.
locals only. Go back to Washington." And they didn't know he was from Idaho. Just
Sure.
renting a
Yeah.
Washington vehicle. But that kind of
Yeah.
goes into this stuff. And it was interesting that we had this schedule for tonight, and that I saw that, and there was a little bit of a common theme. And I want to make sure that we kind of let everybody know how we feel about, because Gilbert, you come to New Mexico as an out-of-stater.
I do.
Yeah.
Every year.
And I don't know, maybe you could enlighten us. What has that experience been like for you?
Well, I tell you, it's been amazing. The people there are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
At first they're kind of reserved when they meet you, but they're real warm and real inviting. I got to tell you, I'm much more guarded growing up where I've grown up here in the suburbs of H-Town. This is a city that never sleeps, truly.
Right.
And you got to stay on your toes because there's elements out here. I hate to say that about my town, but there's elements here that aren't very fun to deal with. And,
Sure.
this year I had a horrible experience coming to New Mexico. I blowed out 4 tires and
Yeah, right.
this, that, and the other. But look, and I'm going to tell you, I was in a little town,
Wagon.
a little town of Wagon Mound, and I was kind of freaked out because people kept rolling up on me without their lights on and stuff. And look, where I come from, ain't nothing good fixing to happen when that happens, right?
Right.
So I strapped up like I'm always pretty much strapped up, and I felt like such a dumbass. Excuse my French, but I felt like such a idiot being that way because those people were just trying to see what the heck I was doing there, right? Who's that in my town?
In our little town, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and they came out to help, and they were so helpful.
LD
I can't thank. Yes, sir. Can't thank those people enough. So I can only say good things about the people in New Mexico and Colorado that I've been around. Very, very accommodating folks.
Right.
I've been so fortunate to be able to hunt and in that area where we hunt, and then up around the Johnson's Mesa area. There's good people all over that country.
Yeah, and each of these stories that we're about to talk about were way different than what you're talking about. And
For sure.
but we want to make sure, guys, that when we talk about this, we're coaches, and each of this from this, we're hoping that it's a teaching moment. So we're going to talk about the natural reaction to each of these things. I mean, how we might react, how we should react. How would we react and why? What would we do from there in that situation? And I want to talk about, can we prepare for something like this in any way? And I think there are ways that we can prepare for something like that.
For sure. If I could say one thing to our listeners that are landowners here in Texas, I'm talking to my people here in Texas. Um, Man, if somebody shoots a deer on your neighbor's on a neighboring property, and it jumps onto your property and dies, please allow them to come and harvest their animal. You know, we all need to get along and love our neighbors and stuff like that. Don't be a turd and not allow that person to come get their. I have seen this about 10 times this year already, and you know the game warden can't make you relinquish that animal. It's on your property.
Sure.
He won't here in the state of Texas. I think
Right.
I think it's horrible. I think the landowners that won't allow you to come retrieve your animal is horrible. You know, especially if you can show them where you've made a clean kill, a clean killing shot on your side, and the animal jumped a fence. And I think you should be accommodating to those that would, want to harvest an animal and bring him back. I mean, instead of you retrieving him and taking him from your own or letting him waste out there for the coyotes to eat, I just want people to treat their brothers with respect, and their brothers and their sisters with respect and honor, and do unto those as you want done unto you. You know, and I just wanted to get that out there because, man,
Yes,
I've
sir.
heard that 3 or 4 times here in Texas, and man, all our brothers out there need to treat each other better.
Well, and that's the whole thing is that we all as a hunting community. Now the problem is not everybody that are those neighboring landowners are of the hunting community. Um, I,
That's right.
I
That's right.
understand that, but a lot of those feelings that come across like that too is again how we represent, how we
That's right.
handle a situation, and the diplomacy that we use. So there's things that we can do to help ourselves out with that. But message definitely heard on that, and
Yes, sir.
totally believe that. We can really elaborate on that, but we're gonna move into some of these stories here. And the
You
first
bet.
story, and I'm not gonna give last names to protect the innocent here, but Dennis's story. Dennis is he's from Montana, and Dennis had actually, you meet a lot of people through what we do, and he had texted, he had emailed, and we had been in communication because he was coming to New Mexico. And and here's a hint for some of you guys. You guys are always asking, like, how do we know places to hunt? How do I go about finding places? What's better and what's not? Well, Dennis didn't come and say, Joe, where should I go hunting? No, Dennis had a plan, and he said, I've got these areas scoped out. I'm going to be in this unit, and what do you think? Should I waste time and would I be wasting time in one? Would I be better in the other? And we had talked about that and kind of got him pointed in a direction. I didn't tell him, this is where I go, where you should go, where somebody else goes. It's just like, that's where he did his research, and it's like, well, I think that's, you're in the right direction like that. So he's there, and the first thing I get on my phone is an email because he doesn't have my phone number at the time. And the email says, someone is shooting at us. We are on the top of a mountain, and these hooligans have come up behind our vehicle and are shooting at our vehicle and up into the trees where we're at. He said, man, we are freaked out. We're up here glassing. We've spotted an elk. We're getting ready for opening day tomorrow, and there's people. He's like, I can hear sirens down there because we've called the police, and they can hear them coming up the mountain, basically. The sirens echoing through, and he's like, man, we're freaked out. We're not coming down off this mountain till midnight, man. We're not going down there, because some guys from our one of our smaller communities up there had followed these guys up there, and they were drunk. They saw them one of the guys get out of the vehicle and start puking on the side of the truck. So alcohol and guns, not a good mix, number one. And these guys basically went on a mission And mission accomplished to freak out some hunters from out of state because they had seen their out of state license plates and them going up there. And
Mm-hmm.
Gilbert, when I heard this, man, I was so ashamed. First, I was shocked. I was angry. I was ashamed that here these guys that had come to New Mexico
Mm-hmm.
with all of these dreams and all of this excitement to come out here and hunt our beautiful land of enchantment was met with a terrorizing experience, man. And
Oh, really?
you know,
So they weren't in Montana, Joe?
no, they were here in
They
New
came
Mexico.
to New Mexico.
Yes, sir.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Wow. I'm
Yes, sir.
very shocked.
And they were hunting they were hunting in an area not too far from where I live. And so that's why I was able to tell them.
Wow.
And yeah, and when he tells me this, I'm just like, okay, what is my first reaction? Because Gilbert, I don't know, and I don't hunt during the rifle season, but I come from a gun family. And what those guys that did this, they were cowards, number one. They're flat out cowards. To have we call it a pica, to have, to be bugged by these guys out of state coming into New Mexico, hunting probably in an area that they hunt in, and then going up there to take it out on them and to scare them and try to scare them off the mountain.
First of all, it's criminal, Joe. You shoot at anybody is criminal. I mean, you're culpable of many offenses.
Do you know where this could have gone? Do you know where because I don't know at that moment, if this happens to me, if somebody's shooting at me, I don't know that I would, in the moment, have not shot back.
Yeah, so one of the things I think you got to understand is the first thing when you know you're being shot at.
Sure.
The first thing you've got to do is get to cover.
Exactly.
To preserve your life.
Sure.
So you got to get to cover, and then you got to get help. Now, if they're closing in on you and they're shooting at you, and you
have to defend yourself.
Fear for immediate danger, and they're I'm not talking about them 400 yards away. I'm talking about them closing the distance and getting within that zone where you're now feeling threatened for your life. Some guys might feel threatened for their life at 400 yards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get to some cover. Hopefully they're not in an elevated position. If they're in an elevated position, you're in serious trouble. You've got to get to cover, and you got to find help. You got to get law enforcement involved. Sounds like they did.
They did. I did. Everybody did. And
sounds like they got some law enforcement involved.
They did. The gentlemen were not caught. Gentlemen, the idiots. I can't call them daggum gentlemen. Those cis, those leeches on society. Scourge, because I'm just so angry about this, man. I'm sorry, but I'm just so angry that. If you have a problem with somebody and you're not man enough just to go and have a conversation with them about it, to tell them your feelings, where you got to pull out a weapon and put somebody's life in jeopardy, and to basically terrorize them. Like you said, this was criminal. It was as criminal as it gets, as far as I'm concerned. And I hope anybody out there that has.
So did anybody get a license plate on the vehicle, Joe?
No, sir.
They saw them puking outside the vehicle.
No.
Was it a UTV they were in, or were they in a truck?
I don't have the exact details on it. They talked with police at the time that came up. And the guys got away. They knew the hills and took a little bit different, and most likely, they were running from a situation that they know could have been very bad for them as well. I mean, those guys should have gone to jail. So
could have gone to jail, could have got killed.
There's a lot, and the thing is,
I can tell you, you pull a weapon on me, and I'm like you. I'm going to find some cover, right? And if you keep coming, I don't have a problem in the world of taking care of that business
That
myself.
could be the natural reaction. And that's why we're talking about this as a teaching moment. That could be the natural
Sure.
reaction right there, depending on your personality, because I was raised that when a person points a gun at you, they intend to kill you. And
100%.
and so it brings out some different instincts in me that might some other people. And
Yeah, you pull a weapon on me, we're done talking.
that's right.
We're
And
done talking.
but
Right.
at the same time, Gilbert, you have to tell yourself, am I willing? Because once I start to go
You can't
past
take
that
it back.
line,
Yeah.
you don't,
You can't take it back.
you don't get to take it back. It
Look,
starts
like I said, man, you want to make sure you find cover, get yourself in a situation that's safe, and then you
and
got to
call for help.
assess the situation. Yeah, call for help. And then you got to assess the situation. Are they pushing?
Right.
Are they pushing in on me further? Right.
In
Then you got to figure
my
out what you want to do.
in my
Horrible situation.
40 years of in my lifetime, I just turned 58.
Mhm.
In my lifetime, I have never, I've heard of stuff happen with law enforcement, game wardens, and I know
Yep.
certain areas and certain parts of the states and stuff, but I have never heard of a situation like this. And I was so appalled that, you know, I told Dennis, man, dude, he's like, do you know, is there some place we can go because we're not coming back here? And at that point, things had changed. Now I was in I'm going to help these boys out in any way I can mode, and
Sure.
they happen to be near a small town where I have plenty of friends, and I called a buddy of mine and said, look, this is what's just happened, and I said, can I get you to help me out because I want them to go to this place and they don't know where it's at, and he said, here's my phone number, have them call me, I will meet them. And we sent them to two different areas that we knew of that were solid areas. And um it was so funny because Dennis, he's like, man, I cannot believe that you're helping me out like this. And I was like, brother, I want you to understand something. You
Yeah.
know, this is my state. You're in my backyard. And what just
Yeah.
happened to you, I am so sorry for, and I am going to do everything I can to make it up to you. And I
Mhm.
tried to. And um, you know, when something like that happens, Dennis and his group, they reacted the best way they knew how. They did not want to escalate the situation. They took cover, make sure they were
Mhm.
safe, make sure somebody got there that could help them out. Um, these guys did not come up on the mountain on them. But, people, um, like I said, I don't think, I think most of y'all out there, the thousands of people listening to this, all y'all could hunt for the next 50 years, all of y'all, and never experience something like this. But
Yeah.
if one of you ever does, I think every one of you should always think about how would I react or what should I do in that situation? Because preparedness, and we talk about this, our thing is always find your failure point and learn to
Yeah.
overcome it. And, number one, you got to have a way to communicate. And these guys, luckily enough, were able to get out some stuff on their cell phone.
Yeah.
I always preach for people to have something, especially like in your group, as like an in reach, someplace where you can get a message out. I know, Gilbert, you carry a sat phone in camp,
Yep.
and we have that. But this is a hard thing to prepare for, other than mentally. In an emergency situation like this, how should you handle it? Okay, so I told you what my gut reaction was, but the thing that you should always do, and it's hard when you got bullets whizzing through the air, but you need to first get yourself safe. Number one, make sure
Yep.
that you and your partners are safe. Number two, take a breath and assess the situation. Okay. Uh,
Yep.
Once you assess the situation, now you're going to determine what your next step is going to be. Is it going to be a defensive? Is it going to be an offensive? Are these guys really cowards like this? Really are shooting up in the air, which could still is so daggum dangerous, And guys,
What
when I'm
goes up's got to
laughing,
come down, Joe.
again, when I'm laughing, it's not because it's comical.
Yeah.
It's because that's my defense mechanism, the way I handle
Sure.
some things. So, yeah. And it's one of those things that, don't let those guys win, and Dennis and those guys, the first reaction to them was, man, we want to leave. And if he would have done that, he would have given those guys exactly what they were trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
So we did just the opposite. We invited him in as one of our New Mexico brothers and tried to help him and his guys that were with him and find a good place for them to hunt and try to help them out as much as possible. That's the least we could have done on that. And had I not been in another area of the state, I would have been right there myself, walking with them. So, yeah.
It may come out yet who did it. It's going to touch a bunch of listeners, and
yes, it sure
those
is.
guys like that talk about it. One thing I've figured out from a background in law enforcement and everything else is most of your turds out there are stupid. So
yeah.
they're gonna be bragging about it, this, that, and the other, and that kind of stuff will find you out.
Yep. And now it didn't end there though, Gilbert, the drama. So I told him to go to this one area, and it's public land, and it was so funny that I was listening to that podcast today because a buddy of mine had taken him up in there, showed him where he could park. They went up, they hunted, came down to their vehicle to a note on his windshield.
No way, dude. Are you serious?
I kid you not,
oh my
man.
gosh.
And the note said,
get out.
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah, the note said something like James, and this guy's name isn't James, so evidently whoever put on it thought it was somebody else. Said, James, we have notified the authorities you are trespassing, and you can take your, and he didn't say it this way, but for our family, he said, take your crap paper with you, and stuck some toilet paper that I guess they found on the ground someplace up there on his windshield. So evidently another person had gone in there and had upset these people, and maybe they had the same color vehicle, and they thought that they were them. Write this note, put it on there, and tell them, to get out, and
these guys are doomed.
Yeah. So, Dennis, man, had some drama, man. And I got a photo from him the other day back home in Montana with a cow elk right there on Thanksgiving. So the elk gods were good for him after all he suffered and stuff. And they ended up having a good hunt. They didn't get an animal while they were hunting, but they had some good experiences as well. So hopefully we salvage some of that. And yeah. So the next story, unbelievable. So get this. I get, and what a great guy Sam is. Sam sends me a photo. He's an ElkBros follower. Sends a photo about his success. We actually have it on our site, and I like to, when guys send a photo in like that, I like to call them personally and congratulate them. So
sure.
I get Sam's phone number from him, and I give him a call, and he's driving through the mountains. He's heading back home from Colorado where he was successful. And he says, he never tells this before, but Sam shoots an elk, and they are packing the elk back to their vehicle. Well, as they're getting close, about a mile out, his buddy's pack with some of the quarters in it busts. And so they had to leave that quarter there. And so the plan was they were going to take all their gear, go to their truck, pack everything in their truck, get the pack they had, go back and get that other quarter and come back. So they are doing that, coming back. And when they're coming back to their vehicle, all the windows are smashed out. All their gear is gone. Bows, camping gear, elk meat, everything is gone. Luckily enough, their vehicle keys were not, they didn't find their vehicle keys in there. So the vehicle, which they were going to steal, was still there, but all busted out, right?
Ah, dang,
So,
man.
so the story goes, man, you talk about patience of Job. These guys drive into Durango to go to the local Toyota shop to get their vehicle fixed so that they can get on the road and go back home. And, you know, they talk to the police, everything like that. Well, while they are at the tire shop, his buddy gets a text on his phone that says that his credit card is being used there in that town. It gets even better. At the
Wow.
tire store across the street. Yes.
From where they're getting the Toyota worked on?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
So they go to the
man.
guy and said, "Do you know where this place is?" He goes, "Yeah, it's across the street." So they call the police. They tell them. The police get over there. A chase ensues. They find the guy there and tase the guy, take him down, end up finding a hotel card in his pocket. Hotel cards, you know, key cards. Go to the hotel. The guy had rented 2 rooms, and the rooms were full of camping gear and hunting gear from multiple vehicles. In fact, he was putting new tires on a stolen vehicle that he had stolen up there. So this guy was victimizing hunters up in the Colorado mountains. And, you know, the saddest part, the good part was they caught the guy, right?
They got their stuff.
The sad part is when your stuff is involved in a crime.
Oh yeah, please keep it.
It becomes
for a while.
evidence, and so you don't get it back for. I mean, I don't know if he'll have it back, his bow and everything, before next season, man. And you know, that's the hard part is being. It doesn't stop being the victim of some kind of crime like that, but you know. What do you do, man? I mean, what is your first gut reaction? What's your natural reaction to this? And you know, I mean, these guys had to have just been devastated, you know, and that's unbelievable. And I wish I knew how much other people around them, if there were people around them that were able to help them out with this or not. But you know, their first reaction was to get into a town and report it. And, you know, how do you prepare for something like that, you know?
You don't. I mean, that's horrible people. There are horrible people in this world, Joe. And, you know, I mean, there's not much you can do. The only thing you can do is lock your doors. Locks are to make, you know, keep honest people honest.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, if the thief wants your stuff, he's going to probably get it. You can try to make it hard for them, make it uncomfortable, where they move on to another easier target.
Right.
But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you something about thieves. You know, I have a little background in law enforcement. Thieves are very desperate people, and they're the most dangerous people out there. Professional thieves, they don't want to call any attention to themselves.
Yeah, right.
So you're not going to find a guy like him a professional thief, going around using your credit card at a tire shop in the same dang town that's close to where he made his theft, right?
Sure.
Like I said, most thieves and turds are dumb, so that's why they get caught. At the end of the day, you know, all you can try to do is lock your stuff up and try to make it hard for them to steal it. But you know, at the end of the day,
I
they're
think
going to
yeah, I totally get it.
they're going to make it hard on you. You know?
And I think the only thing that we can do to prepare for something like this is, again, it goes back to us being a community, is that, you know, we have talked about the unwritten rules and ethics and stuff like that when you're around people's camp and around people's gear. I think the other thing that is unwritten is again, you know, we are a community. It is up to us to take care of each other. If you see somebody that is doing something that looks out of line or affecting other people out there,
Report
of
it.
our hunting community. Report it. If you're not comfortable with stepping in on it, asking somebody something, be careful putting yourself in a bad situation. But everybody has a cell phone right now, and they all have
Video it.
cameras on it. Video, take
Yep.
pictures. That's some of the best thing that you can do to help out. And luckily, like you said, there's dumb criminals out there, and this was this was one of them, man. I
That's
tell you.
hilarious that he got caught, serves his butt right.
Yep, definitely, man. That was so cool that happened. So yeah, that's
Like I
one.
said, criminals are thieves like that, Joe, are desperate people, and they'll do anything. So
Well,
you got to be real careful with them.
yeah,
Desperate people do desperate things, and they can
yes, they
hurt
do.
you. And ain't none of your gear, none of your bows, none of your elk meat worth your life.
Sure,
So,
definitely.
when faced with something in that kind of adversity, relinquish all of that, live to fight another day.
So on my last story here, Andy story. Again, this is one of those texts. I'm actually we're in Portales at the Hall of Fame thing for Chav, and I get a text that says someone stole my elk. So yeah, this is a first time elk hunter. In fact, had never thought about elk hunting until listening to our podcast.
Is this in New Mexico too,
This
Joe?
is it. This one's in New Mexico. Now, Sam was in Colorado.
Right.
Dennis was. So, yeah, I hope you guys, it doesn't freak y'all out about New Mexico again. But first time elk hunter, hunting with his brother, had listened to all of our podcasts, had taken everything, learned so much, and goes up on his first elk hunt ever, opening morning of the rifle elk, calls in a bull to 80 yards and drops him. Boom. And I'm like, yeah.
Awesome.
So here's where things get a little interesting, and this is where this one's actually kind of good conversation is his first time hunting. He gets so excited. Him and his brother, they're taking pictures, they're high-fiving, they're on cloud nine. I mean, had never been elk hunting before, doing this for the first time, and opening morning, calling a bull, which just blew their mind, and take the bull. So they're like, well, let's go get the UTV and bring it back as close as we can so that we can get our bull onto the UTV. And so they do. They go to get the UTV, hike all the way back to their camp, get the vehicle, come back. And when they get there, the only thing they find is tire tracks, footprints, and beer cans. No elk.
What?
Yep.
The whole elk is gone?
Whole elk is gone.
They loaded it in a vehicle and took it?
Yes,
or in
sir.
a UTV?
Yes, sir. Exactly. Yep. And so now let's really take a look at this, because at first thought you're kind of like, yeah, somebody stole his elk. But so here's where the mistake happened, is that after they shot the animal, they didn't gut the animal, they didn't tag the animal. They got so excited they left the animal to go get. They just didn't think through. And
Needed to leave one person with the animal.
yeah, and it just so I've talked to several people about this, and we've chewed about this and tried to see it from different viewpoints. And I've had some people say, well, look, if I'm in the woods and I am hiking and I come across a dead elk and I've waited there and there's nobody that's around the area, that it's not tagged, it's not gutted. He said, I assume somebody has shot this thing and lost it. And I don't want it to go bad, and I'm going to take it, okay.
Don't they have to notify the game warden if they do that?
That's
in New Mexico?
that's a real good question.
I know they have to in Colorado.
If you're going to, but I wonder how many people would do that. I wonder how many people would take the time to actually do something like that. And what you should do, and sometimes what, happens with that. I mean, for example,
So I had the same thing happen with a buddy of mine, Justin Howe in Colorado.
Right.
They heard a hell of an elk fight going on down in the canyon. They ran down there. Bull shatter his vertebrae in his neck in the fight, and the bull's dead laying there after the fight's over.
Sure.
They called. They're like, well, I mean,
Yeah.
can we have the meat? The elk's dead. None of us
your
killed him
tag
with
on
our
it,
bow,
yes.
right?
Yes.
So the game warden said, listen, if y'all touch that elk, that's your elk.
That's right.
And if you skin him, and y'all got to put a tag on him. And they're
exactly.
like, well,
and see
we
that
want to keep hunting. And the game warden's like, well, if y'all want to keep hunting, then you can't tag the elk. And he's like, well, are you going to come out here and get it? Because it's going to go to waste and the coyotes are going to eat it. She said, no, I'm like 2.5 hours away. He said, well, we don't want to let the meat go to waste. She said, well, if you guys want to gut and quarter it, I'll come pick it up from you. So they gutted it and quartered it.
Oh, okay.
And she came out and she said, because you guys did the right thing, I'm going to write you a receipt for this elk. And you guys can keep it, or you can donate it to the Hunters for the Hungry.
There you
and,
go. That's a win-win.
That is, but they did the right thing, Joe. They just didn't take the elk. And like they said, we didn't know somebody shot him or what. We heard a heck of a fight going on down there. That elk died in the fight, shattered his neck. So
definitely. Well, and I can tell you one of the things, when you think about this too, by law, after these guys had killed their animal and came to it, the first thing they're supposed to do is they're supposed to notch their tag, right?
That's right.
And again, being a first time out and never having elk hunted, I can see that being an honest mistake. But
they didn't have a guide with them, Joe.
Oh no, they were on their own, bro. They didn't need a guide. They were listening to ElkBros.
For sure. Yeah.
So and they called the game warden. They had that conversation, and again, the game warden did the right thing too, and realized what was going on there, and had them continue to hunt. And he had a photo, man. He had a photo of him with the animal.
That's horrible.
Yeah, and he felt horrible, and we had a lot of conversation about that, and that's a tough one to overcome. You have such a bad taste in your mouth, and again, those guys learned from it. They had to rise up from that. The next day, they call in another bull, and his brother shoots it. So they had a very successful hunt. They had a real up and down emotions, man. I mean, it was peaks and valleys of emotions. You're down, and then you're up. But when we talk about a teaching moment, the natural reaction for them was to think somebody had stole their animal and to feel violated and stuff like that. But at the same time, you've got to stop and take a look. Okay, what was my part in this? I should have.
How long did it take them to get back to the elk?
I don't know. When you're hiking and then getting gear together at camp and then coming back, it might have been hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't know. I'm guessing. So I don't know exactly how far away they were, from
sure.
That. They did the right thing. They contacted law enforcement. They talked with law enforcement, and they gave them their best advice and told them to keep hunting. They were pretty sick, but these brothers ended up having a great time together. And I would say the best way that they could prepare for something like this is just to make sure that you just follow protocol. Make sure that after an animal, you notch that tag, you go ahead and gut that animal, and make sure that animal is tagged before you go to get it. You want to do that anyway, guys. You don't want to leave that animal. Now it's winter time, of course, but you want to go ahead and gut that animal and start getting them cooled as soon as possible, or quartered out, whatever you're going to do. And
I think lesson learned here is you need to leave. If you got 2 guys, you need to leave one with him.
Yeah.
It's almost imperative.
Well, and I can tell you, Gilbert, as far as that goes, when you're someplace that you don't know, sometimes having somebody with you is a little bit of a comfort, so that you worry about somebody getting lost. Or if you're sitting there waiting with the elk and you're there for 2 hours and they don't show up, then you start worrying if they're lost, and if you don't have communication. So that's some things that you guys got to really think about with stuff like that. I would say that, I would rather, if I didn't know and they wanted to travel together, that animal was tagged, quartered out, hanging, and then go get the vehicle, come and get it, haul it out. And then if somebody steals your animal, it's actual theft, like that, because that they knew that animal was taken care of. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
so those are three of the stories from the 2019 season. Some of
Man.
you guys listening out there, if you have any stories like that you'd like for us to talk about and share with people, and how you handled it, and the lessons that you learned from it, drop us an email, man. Or if you guys have any questions from any of that, send it to us. We're getting ready to go to our ElkBros Mailbox, and
Yes, sir.
guys, don't forget, you can send questions in to us at info at elkbros.com. And we always ask you, and you hear it in there, but guys, please do us a favor, man. If you're on YouTube watching this, if you're on Apple Podcasts listening to, if you're on Stitcher, rate us and leave a review for us. And please go
You
over there
bet.
and hit that subscribe button, man.
Yep.
You subscribe, then when we do a podcast and comes out, you're gonna know right away when that's come out. Okay, so on our mailbox, Gilbert, I don't know if you noticed, but I only have one name on here because we had some questions that came in, and these guys would rather had stayed anonymous on this because they didn't want to feel like they offended anyone, and so we've we've eliminated the names
Right.
on the first two questions here, and they really have to do with relationships between hunters. So the first question says, the group I went with has been hunting this area for 30 years or so, and I'm fortunate and grateful they asked me to join them. But what advice would you give to a first-time elk hunter going with a well-established group?
Well, I mean, if you're going with a well-established group, I mean, you gotta fit in. I think it's important for you to fit in. I think it's important for you to try to be helpful and and then not go against the grain. I mean, these guys have offered to bring you into their camp, and I think you should definitely be grateful, and act that way for sure.
Yeah, and you actually take it for what it is. It's an opportunity.
Hmm.
Because these guys have been hunting this area for so long, they're kind of sharing some stuff with you. But at the same time, this is an opportunity for you to learn, to get your
Hmm.
feet wet, and to experience these guys. And that doesn't mean that it's a marriage.
Hmm.
If you go to hunt with them, and again, like Gilbert says, man, because we have guys, we have a new person that generally comes into our camp that ever so often and hunts with us, and I measure guys up pretty quick, and and you know you can tell the ones that are out there that are excited, that really love the hunt, that love the opportunity, that are grateful to be in the woods, and grateful to learn, and they work hard, and they want to really have the whole experience. And as somebody that's been out there a lot of times and hunting places, when I get those, it actually takes me back. I love seeing their excitement. So you know I would say that when you come into a group like that, don't underwhelm yourself, man. Don't hide
Yeah.
the excitement. Enjoy the
Be a
moment.
sponge. Be a
Yeah,
sponge, man. Learn, ask questions, learn, be helpful to the group, participate, um, and then try to hook your wagon to somebody who's been real successful within that group. There's going to be a guy in that group that gets it done just about every year. Hone in on that, pick their brain, be receptive, but I would say if anything, they invited you to that group, man, just be subservient, right? Serve that group, and they will always want guys to come to camp that have that kind of heart, that want to ride the river together with
And and the other side of it too is if you hunt with them and you find out, and there's just something about it that does not go right with you. I mean, every group
Yeah,
has its own personality, and if that doesn't fit you, well, that's okay too.
you
Take
bet.
the experience for what it is, and
Move on.
move on,
Hmm.
man. Try another group, try another partner. Maybe you're somebody that needs to hunt with another person, not a whole bunch of people. Figure out what it was that worked for you out of that group, what it was that did not work for you, and then try to match yourself up with like people. And you know, if you're on social media, Instagram, and you get involved in some of those, sometimes and you can locate people very similar minded as yourself. So, uh, that's our advice for somebody like that. Take it for what it's worth, learn from it, get experience, and either, you know, like what you're doing and hang with it, uh, unless they didn't like you.
Yeah. Yeah. You won't be invited back if that's the
Yeah.
case, I assure you.
Yeah. So the next one is kind of along the same lines, Gilbert. It says, I hunt with 6 guys that have been hunting the same area for 10 years and have never killed an elk there. They are older than me, and I'm the youngster of the group. They always hunt the same way year after year and are not open to any other strategies or suggestions. I
Mm.
really appreciate the camaraderie and the time together, but they don't want to change, and I'm getting frustrated. Do you have any suggestions on how to handle this?
Sounds like they're going up there drinking whiskey and not hunting elk. So, and I don't know. Something like that, man. Is you gotta do what's right for yourself. Be respectful to the group. If you're
Right.
really serious about killing an elk and they're not getting it done, you're gonna have to find something else to do. And go find another group to hunt with, or explain to them your frustration. I think guys are very open to where if you explain to them how they feel, they either can accommodate it or they can understand you're wanting to move on.
And at the same time too, um, you've come in with them and they're not willing to change things. Well, be the pinch hitter sometimes,
Yeah.
man. Go in there and don't be offensive about it, but go
Sure.
out there and try something different on your own. And
Hmm.
if you're successful, you might be able just to teach an old dog some new tricks as well. So,
Might
uh,
change the hearts and minds of many.
yeah, because I don't know, I don't know if these 6 guys are relatives, you
Sure,
know.
sure, yeah, family.
Yeah, I don't know if they're family or if they're just buddies, but you know, just because they're doing things the same way. Now, if it becomes an antagonistic environment if you go and do something on your own, well, that's no fun. That's not what you're there
No,
for, and
exactly.
you need to change it. You need to move on. But um,
Hmm.
at the same
Just
time,
tell them you learned some really cool stuff on ElkBros.com, and you're doing it if it hair lips the governor. And if they don't like it, you're going to leave. No, I'm just kidding. Just tell
well,
them to call Joe and Chav and Gil and the Venezuelan Mafia, and they'll let you know the real deal.
hey, and at the same time, Gilbert's got a good idea, man. Give him a call and say, man, yeah, this is a real cool podcast I've been listening to. You guys, why don't you
Yeah.
check out this one right here? See what you think. Let me know. And I mean, there's ways I've always felt is, I don't know if it's one of my flaws or one of the good things about me, but I think there's something good in everybody. And sometimes
100%.
you take the good and you work on the bad. I always, coming from a small town and coaching in a small school, we always had to dance with the person we came with. So, you find ways to be able to improve those people around you, and don't expect them just to jump to your way right away, because if you ain't got no proof in the pudding, why should they change? Now, if they haven't killed any elk in 10 years and they're doing the same thing,
It's the
that's,
definition of insanity.
yes, sir. You can't be doing the same thing and expect a different result, So, but you're the one that could actually start that and change
No
that.
doubt.
And,
Be bold, brother.
there you go. So those are our suggestions, man. Make it happen. And the last one comes from Zach Fisher. And Zach Fisher's a great friend of ours. And real supportive, and Zach's another one of those
Big
people
time.
we get a lot of things from and calls in. And Zach said, what's your preference in coolers? Is it significantly worth spending big bucks on an Orion 85, or does it make more sense to buy 2 big butt coolers at Costco that stores more?
That's simple. I mean, for me, you know what we do. You can't substitute a great cooler, right? The money that you spend on it, I feels insignificant, right? So I think any of your molded coolers like that, Orion, Orca, Yeti, or Arctic, you know, there's a Grizzly, there's several of them out there, but they hold ice a lot longer, and they keep your animal and your venison on ice much better than the Costco type smaller igloo, you know, stuff like that. So I think it's fantastic. I think, yeah, they're worth their weight in gold up there in the mountains.
So I'm going to be the devil's advocate on that, bro. And, you know, I've always hunted in New Mexico until I went to a buddy's place down to hunt pigs in Texas, and out of his gracious invitation. But one of the reasons I've never hunted out of the state was paying a $600, $700 license was not in my ability. I couldn't do that. And paying $400 or $500 for a cooler wasn't going to happen. I mean, when I came down to prioritizing what I was going to put my money on my annual hunt on, it wasn't going to all go into a cooler. And now I want you to know, I have a Yeti. I did not buy it myself. It was a gift to me from my track athletes, actually. Incredible. But until then, you know, I mean, you're taking a look. I can buy 120 Yeti for $500, or I can buy 6 igloos for that amount, you know. So my goal was, I always had 2 or 3 igloos. I get one a year, anywhere from 60 to $80. I would block my ice. In other words, I would take gallon jugs and freeze them in our freezer so that our ice lasted longer while we were out there. I found ways to mitigate and get around it because I did not have that kind of budget. Would I have liked to have had some of them coolers? Well, heck yeah, man. Do I like my Yeti? I love my Yeti. It's a heavy son of a gun. I mean, you better have some people with you, man. When that thing has either ice in it or an elk in it, you better have some boys with you.
When it has both, it's real heavy.
Oh my gosh. So,
but you can fill it full of animal and ice, and it'll last a week in the mountains.
yeah.
And not only that, it's going to last you till you die. It's not, you know,
I'm gonna be
it's a
buried.
cooler for life.
Yeah. And I've had to do a lot of repairs on my igloos over the year, but you know what, y'all? They packed out elk. I was able to ice down in there. I was able to, I would use one cooler where I would just fill it up with ice, and the other one, I would, in one I would put food and some ice, and then a third one I'd put gear in it and keep it empty. So that's kind of how I traveled with mine. So, I say you got to put your priorities into things. And if that's one of the areas, now I'm not telling you not to prepare for success, because, buddy, I always planned on taking an elk out of the mountains. But they were always, and you can see a graveyard of igloos out here in my yard too.
Yeah, me too. I have a graveyard of them as well. The thing that I wasn't prepared for was like a year like this year where it was so hot, and we needed to keep ice. Heck, we even had to come down off the mountain and go get ice because it melted, so. But it didn't melt. It didn't melt in our Yetis, right?
Yeah,
so,
and that's an option too, Gilbert. And I'll tell you guys, listen to this, Zach. For the price of what you're going to pay for that Orion, and not an 85. I mean, that's, but you get a bigger Yeti or something like that. You can go on right now. You can go on Walmart.com and you can buy you a 9 cubic freezer for about $169. And you can either plug that sucker in, you can pack it with ice. They do a good job with that. They do have drain plugs in them too. Or you can hook that up to a generator, and you could freeze that booger out for about the same cost as what you pay for that Yeti. So it just depends on what you want to do, and you have that thing for year after year. So
yeah, and I think Joe makes a very good point. And if it's not in your budget, then yeah, the Orion's probably not the way to go. If it is, then they're pretty cool. You won't have to buy another cooler for a long time.
Right.
And I'm of the opinion that they're pretty tough. I'm pretty hard on stuff, right? So about every year and a half, I got to put latches on my igloos and stuff like that. And, look, can you break a Yeti latch? Mm-hmm. Done it. So, my buddies all tell me that I got, I'm kind of crazy strong and I break latches on Yetis and stuff like that. And I'm like, look, man, I can break anything. I come from the oil field. We can mess up an anvil. So I think those coolers are tough. Right now, I know some of them are on sale, so you guys go check them out. You can buy a 145 for about $388 from Arctic right now. So that's a heck of a deal. Most of those coolers are over $500.
And I think on our next podcast, we're going to talk about some of these deals that are coming up, especially after Christmas, where guys can pick stuff up. We can do that. But I think the last thing I wanted to make a point to, Gilbert, is you're somebody that not only elk hunts, but you've got your deer lease and you fish all during the year. So your coolers get a whole lot of use on there and abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And some of you guys, if you're just going to elk hunt and travel with those big coolers where you don't, if you're deer hunting at home and you're taking it, stuff
every
to
weekend.
And if you're taking stuff into the barn and putting it in the freezer, you ain't got to worry so much. And you're only using those big coolers once a year. Yeah, think about that. Think about what kind of investment you want to put into that. All right.
That's right.
I hope we help out. I hope that gives you guys a couple of viewpoints on that.
You betcha, Joe. Been an amazing show. Glad to be back, brother.
That's awesome.
Again, guys, please rate, subscribe, review us. That's how we get, everything rolling here, for
show us
for
some love,
today.
y'all.
Yeah, show us some love for sure. Keep Chav and my dad, Matt Montgomery, in your prayers. All of that. So we'll keep you updated on their progress. We're believing that the good Lord's going to heal them boys and get them back to prominence. And we look forward to that and look forward to next week's show for sure.
And Chav, as always, bud, when you're not with us, this one's for you.
Absolutely. This one's for Chav and everyone's for Chav for sure. Joe, I appreciate everything. It was a great show tonight. Guys, I've always said this, mamas, hug your husbands, husbands, kiss your wives, hug your babies, keep your broads head sharp and your powder dry. And we'll catch you next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
God bless y'all.
God bless.